Hey everyone, welcome back to the OMBase Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Moody, and today we're very excited to have Lily Youn with us to discuss scaling demand gen, lessons from startup to scale up. Lily, thanks for joining us today and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Excited to be here.
Well, we're pumped to have you here. I know that the weather is lovely in Austin, Texas today, so I appreciate you locking yourself in a room with me for a little bit. But we love to start each episode with a little understanding of the journey that led you to what you're doing today.
Yeah. And to your point, the weather is amazing, but very excited to be here. So, wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I'd say career-wise and what brought me here today. I started my career in tech as a BDR. And prior to starting my career in tech as a BDR, I was actually a full cycle sales rep and a non-tech industry. And so I didn't really have like an understanding of marketing and where leads were coming from. I just knew it showed up magically on my computer every morning and like I'd have to follow up with them. And it wasn't until I actually started my career in tech, right around the time like Austin started really booming up in the tech space, and got my BDR role. And the leader, my manager at that time, was actually leading the BDR team and also the marketing strategy at the startup. And so that was my first introduction of understanding like demand generation and how it all comes together for businesses. And at that point, the organization was like a Series B startup. And so very fast paced, learned the impact that each campaign can have in relation to like a BDR and overall in turn the business. And so my interest started really growing in how does that all work together and how do you actually get the right channels and overall like how does that impact the business and the people in a positive way and where can I fit into that? And so that's how it all kind of started for me. And then kind of built my career more into the sales aspect and then transitioned more into the full demand generation aspect as I started going to like earlier stage organizations. So Series A and then seed funded company. And now I'm at a larger organization. And so having kind of like walked the different paths of different stages, it's been a really great experience and seeing how different organizations operate their demand gen teams.
I love that. Talk about experience when it comes to alignment. When you've been a seller, you've been a BDR, and then in demand gen, that's always advantageous. I'm sure that never helps you every single day. I'm curious, what's inspired your focus on account-based strategies and those go-to-market approaches within demand generation?
Yeah, great question. I feel like the camp-based strategies, what really inspired me is initially I was a part kind of like a Wild West model. There wasn't really a strategy when I first started in sales, and I didn't really understand like what exactly are we doing. I just know that I just need to reach out to contacts and see if we can set a meeting. And it wasn't until a little bit later, in regards to account-based marketing strategies that I was looking at like and learning as well a lot along the way around the industry changing technology that's helping with the strategy. And one thing I took away from all my learnings is it all starts with the accounts. I always like to tell my team, what's the most important part of your house when it's getting built? The foundation. And so similar to um, applying it to like strategy for organizations, everything starts with the accounts. And so you do activities, you find the right contacts within the accounts, you do activities on top of those contacts, which yield opportunities. And all the quality of that depends upon the accounts that you have and how you're going to market and targeting those accounts. And so I kind of always say, like, if your foundation's not great, you're going to start getting cracks in your house, in your walls, and your like windows, and Believe me, I've seen it actually happen to one of our neighbors, and it's not great to their house. And that's how I see like our business as well. It's like, what are the right accounts and what are the right channels to meet our buyers in? What's the right messaging, and how do we improve that over time? And so that's something that I've taken away from each of my organizations, and that applies to any stage organization.
Yeah, I love that. And foundation problems, super scary. Just getting termite inspections here is scary enough. So I can't imagine how much it costs to fix a foundation. Important to all demand gen strategies is the team too. So, I'd love to know if there were any pivotal moments or challenges that happened in your career that changed the way you think about building and scaling demand generation teams.
Yeah, I'd say pivotal moment was going to a very early stage company where we were doing category creation. And it was also timing wise really crazy. It was when everything was getting shut down with COVID happening. And so what I thought were the basics were no longer the basics with our buyers, especially. And so I think with like the team aspect, it really was a lot of communication that was needing to be done. And we were all remote, and a lot of us had never worked remote before too. So over communicating like what are the goals that we're looking to achieve and being aligned on that across the board as an executive team was a big pivotal moment in my career. I feel like either I'm going to have to step up and find creative ways to get through this, or we're not going to do so well in the next quarter and the next few quarters. So, for me, it was really about like, how do we communicate in the best way and pivot and change with our surroundings and all the events happening, and make sure that we are aligning and understanding our buyers and what they're going through as well, and how do we best communicate with them so that way we can make sure that we're up to date with what's going on, and having conversations with our own team and keeping them interested and aligned to solving the problem.
I love that. And I look, I know from talking to a lot of marketing leaders, you mentioned Series A, Series B, startup, scale up. A lot of folks like to narrow in on one very specific stage for a company growth. I'm curious if you think your experiences at startups helped to prepare you for scale ups, or maybe one comes before the other, chicken or the egg style. But tell us a little bit about how you think of that experience helping you at different stages of company growth.
Yeah, great question. I'd say so. I went from scale up to like startup, and then back to scale up. So I think what the scale up to or going to startup phase really taught me was I thought I was resourceful a lot and scrappy at my first organization at the scale up, but when I got to the startup, I was like, oh, I really did not know what scrappy and resourcefulness is until I joined the earlier stage company, because you're really having to wear multiple hats. You don't have the full team, marketing team to support you and the full sales team to support you. So you're having to actually do a lot of the work, and you're having to better prioritize what's actually going to yield the highest results, because there's so many things that you could be doing for each of the different departments to support them, whether it's very top of funnel demand gen or ongoing pipeline support or customer upsell and renewal support. So I think that was my biggest learning, and going to an earlier stage is how do I prioritize and make sure I'm really just focusing on those main three goals for each quarter, and then moving on to the next few goals. Whereas I think for larger organizations where I had a few more resources, it's more about you can do other things on the side because you have the capacity to do that. But and then going from startup to scale up, I think has really allowed me to kind of just get into the weeds a bit more still, and like help in different aspects and guide more on the day to day side of things for my team. So there's a value in like having the different transitions for both.
Awesome. I think that's great advice. I feel the same way too. I mean, some of my favorite experiences were companies of 25, but I've also been the first full time employee. Then I've worked at some of the biggest companies in the world. All can give you very distinct experiences. I'd
Yes.
love to dig into the ramp up as a new demand generation leader. In the first 30 days, if you're joining new, what are the top 3 priorities that you think everyone should focus on?
Yeah. So for me, it's always been aligning with the company goals, and understanding with the main stakeholders of like where can I support, what's needed from my department. And so it's actually really relevant because I just started at my new company like 2 months ago now. It feels like I've been there forever. And so that was like my first thing, having one on ones with main stakeholders to align on strategy goals with the sales department, a product marketing department, RevOps, CS, the exec team, and making sure that we understand, I understand specifically like what does my team need to focus on and what are the top 3 things that I can work on within my first quarter. And so that's the first thing I did. And then the second thing I did was take a look at our existing programs, the performance of those programs. So um, the BDR organization reports to me as well. And so kind of got a breakdown of metrics from the BDR team, but then also our different channels and campaigns, what funnel conversions look like overall, and then understanding attribution first. And then finding where the gaps are from there. Because I'm sure you've experienced this. Like everybody, when you first start, they're like, oh my God, so glad you're here. Let's talk about what we need to prioritize. And you're really needing to listen. And they have a good point of like prioritizing, but you also want to make sure you have the data to help with that prioritization and the goals that need to be achieved from the business standpoint.
Absolutely. And as you're figuring out those longer term strategies too and really getting plugged into a business, how do you work to identify potential quick wins where you can make an early impact?
Yeah. I have a concept of like people first. So I look at capacity on my team and I try to understand where are we generating, who's generating the most pipeline in regards to like demand generation for the organization. And so I usually look at like top performers on the BDR team and then look at what they're doing and then try to understand what are the potential gaps that they have that we can support with. And so from there, I kind of create a playbook of like an example, and then fill in those gap areas. And then from like funnel aspect, I do a breakdown of like understanding what are our conversions from lead stage to MQL to sales qualified, and then opportunity to close one, win rates and loss rates. And so trying to understand like where is the leakage with friction. And then that usually gives you a really good idea of like what are the technical things that you should be focusing on then from there to improve those specific metrics. So just as an example of like you're noticing your lead to MQL conversion rate isn't could be improved, then it's a matter of like digging into understanding what exactly is causing that, whether it's the messaging, whether it's like the lead routing scenario. Maybe there's too much of a delay. We're not following up as quickly as enough as we should be. So scenarios like that. And I'm actually reading a really good book recommended to me by my mentor, but it it's really what it states, like what it stated really stood out to me. And it was saying like, you need to go do the job to understand like how to solve it, or at least ask the person who's doing the job to understand what's happening to solve any type of gaps. And so, really just trying to understand like what's actually the day-to-day scenario that's happening that's impacting some of the metrics and the conversions there.
Yeah, this is such a good point. Just do the job. That it reminded me of my first job as a product manager, and there was no substitute for just walking in the doctor's office. It was a medical device product, but seeing how they interact with things, and it was very different than the support tickets that came in, because you started to see, oh, the problem is not with the product. It was with an accessory. It was the basket on the mobile stand, not the mobile stand, just the basket. They would
Yeah.
come off and then they'd have stacks of them, but it never made its way up. It was, we have a problem with the product. And then boom, boom, boom. Until you did the job, we didn't really see it. So I think that one spoke to me a lot. I'm curious, what are the biggest challenges if you're going from demand gen strategies at a startup to the scale up, where you're really trying to hit that maximum velocity, huge momentum, bigger numbers that you have to accomplish?
Yeah, I think from startup to scale up, some of the challenges and differences, I'd say, like to your point, it's like when you're at a startup, you're really needed to have a targeted account list. And so, like TAM, SAM, SOM, serviceable, addressable market, and serviceable, attainable market. Really kind of getting that idea of like who are the top 100 accounts that we should be really targeting as an early stage startup that would be our perfect ICP fit. And but that also is a challenge, is like when you're so early stage, you're like, what is our ICP fit? And so it's like step one, we got to really find our ICP fit, and then build off from there. And whereas for scale ups, it's really about, you need programs that definitely can scale across the different regions and personas and the different verticals, and then making sure that everyone is aligned with the personalization that's needed for each of those scenarios. So I think that's one of the bigger challenges, is like that transition of like, oh, we actually need to do more process related focus, and training. And because you do have more headcount and more resources and capacity that you need to be aware of at the scale up stage. And then I think earlier stage companies have a little bit more of a challenge with like investing in good CRM hygiene and data. I've been very fortunate where I've been a part of organizations where like the CRM has been very clean when I started, and also clean when I left. And so I think where like at early stage, you're very much like, let's go. We got to like build as much pipeline as we can and close as many deals. And, so you end up getting super busy in the day to day stuff. And you end up potentially losing the focus and need on understanding like attribution, setting up the right criterias and definitions, and having that alignment as an executive team. Um, and that can impact a lot as you are getting to that scale up stage, right? Because then you end up having to like overhaul your CRM processes and update all the fields and definitions. And when you're trying to do historical reporting, it becomes much more of a headache. Um, but I think that's a big focus and recommendation I would have for earlier stage leaders, is like, even if you don't have the tech to do it, use a spreadsheet and start tracking it, from day one. It will help in the end. And you may not use it immediately, but it could come over, like, it'll probably help eventually. So,
Absolutely. And I laughed when you were talking about the startup ICP, because I was at around a 30-person company, and Oracle bought us. And in the due diligence process, they were pressing pretty hard on the ICP.
uh-huh.
We were around a 30-person company, and my answer was, our ICP is anyone who pays us. And that was not sufficient to them. And they kept pressing. And I said, no, literally, anyone who will transact with us is our ICP right now. That's just how it was as a startup. And then you go in and you have to get a lot more specific. But our customers range from mom and pop teddy bear shop right down the street, literally, to one of the largest companies in the world who is in every store that you walk in, right? And that just it reminded me, very different top 100 accounts versus scale up and startup. I'm curious, you were hitting on technology. What are some of the frameworks or tools that you lean on to align account-based strategies with company-wide go-to-market efforts?
Yeah. Great question. So, Alignment is always something that I am very passionate about because I like to know what goals I need to be focusing on. And I think that's my biggest thing. It's like, if you give me the goal, I will focus on whatever I can do to achieve that goal. And the challenges that I see a lot with leadership teams, it can be the fact that people aren't aligned on the goals. And so, technology wise, you can use like OKR solutions or project management solutions to help that foster that communication. But I think it really starts with like the executive team, and they need to have that time to connect with each other and discuss and make sure they are aligned on where they want to take the company, the go to market strategy, and then cascade that from there. So, like a framework, OKRs. Are you familiar with OKRs? Like,
Yes, we have just been through that process for this quarter. Shout out Workboard for us, but we use tools like that too.
oh, awesome. We also use Workboard. Um, so great solution. And so in the sense of like cascading that information, it really helps just to like understand and prioritize like what are the biggest focuses for this quarter, next quarter. And then from there, what are each department heads focused on to support that? And so then from like a leadership, a VP side of things, then I take those OKRs and then um, create my own for each of my department heads as well. And then they also cascade that message to our individual contributors. So that way we're making sure that the entire organization is fully aligned to how they actually impact the day to day, but also like how that day to day work that they're doing is impacting the overall goal. Because I feel like when you're doing the day to day stuff, a lot of the times you lose sight of like, what is this actually impacting overall, and having like a visual document, that reminder, whether you show it to the team weekly or monthly, helps keep people in line, because sometimes you get sidetracked, right? Like there's another project that can be coming up and you're like, oh yeah, let me go take a look at that project. But then when you look at your OKRs that are assigned to you, it helps you realign and say, does this actually align with supporting the OKRs? And if not, let's try to prioritize this and for another quarter then.
Yeah, I totally agree. We go through that process bi-weekly. So we do bi-weekly updates, and that is keeping your eye on the metrics that matter to drive the right behaviors. They may not be directly correlated to the measurement, but it's always getting our brains in the right place. So I'm a big fan of that. And you mentioned alignment, or well, being aligned in the process. I'd love to go back to alignment and revisit that. You've been a BDR, you've been a seller across the entire cycle, you lead demand gen teams. How do you ensure alignment between sales and marketing as teams grow and you have different stages of growth at each company?
Yeah, great question. So right now, I'd say from all my experiences, the biggest thing has just been finding time, like a regular set schedule on the calendar to meet with each department stakeholders and having a agenda of what needs to be covered, and making sure that again it's tied to the objectives and key results that you have as a business. So I typically like to have the meetings focused on strategy topics, and like there's always day to day stuff back and forth on like existing projects and campaigns that we're running. So it's like, okay, those should be done quickly, right? We can message each other very quick or hop on a quick call. But at least having a bi-weekly meeting with the main department stakeholders and trying to align on making sure we're on the right track from a go-to-market standpoint. Has there been any changes in our environment, whether it's our internal environment or our external environment for our buyers, that we need to actually pivot and change some of the strategy? And I think that's something that I've learned a lot, regardless of the stage of the organization, is like making sure we're recognizing, like, do we need to pivot as quickly as possible before it gets too late? And are we A/B testing the right things?
I love that. I have a soapbox question for you. So we're going to create a hypothetical situation.
Yeah.
You're in a room full of demand generation leaders, and you can step on the soapbox. Your goal is to make sure that they avoid the most common pitfalls, traps, mistakes, and building out their demand generation teams. So, if you're on that soapbox, what are the things that you would want to make sure other demand generation leaders avoid to build the best possible demand gen team?
Mm. Avoid to build the best demand generation team. There's so many things. um, I think as you're building out your demand gen team and you're thinking about how do I create the best in class demand generation team, it's really about defining like roles within your department as a leader of like, what are the strengths that our current team has and what are some of the gaps, and then understanding like, do does our everyone on our team have a clarity of what their role is within the team, so their roles, responsibilities, what they own, and then from there making sure you're filling in the gaps with the right people, because people are what drives success within an organization from my experience. And the not everyone has the same like skill set, and so it's finding the people who have specific skill sets and making sure that that is contributing to the organization.
Outstanding. Okay, similar question, just a little extra specificity here. You talked about your mentor earlier, which I think is always great to have a mentor. If you are the mentor and it's a duration leader, so demand gen leader for the very first time,
Mm.
what is the most critical piece of advice you're going to give them?
Mm, yeah. I was going to say go find a mentor, but if I'm the mentor,
You are the mentor. Yeah. Well, that could be it actually. I mean, we could take a step back. Maybe that is the thing. Like have someone to talk to.
yeah, I'd say like yeah, step one is finding someone that has a similar background as you. I think there's a lot of great um experienced leaders out there that you can reach out to that are like common thought leaders within the space. That being said, if they're not at the same stage as you, it may not be as relevant to reach out to them and get their feedback if they're like 30 years in their career and you're just starting off, right? And so finding someone with like a relevant, similar background, has gone through that transition as you, and then has some recency behind it too, can definitely be impactful. And then the other thing is once you find that mentor, and it could be from like different channels, right? You can either connect through your network, personal network, or go to some of the communities, join some Slack communities, online communities with leaders and try to find a mentor there. Um, and then once you find that mentor, so let's say that mentor was me, I always like to, before I give advice, I usually like to understand like what is that person's situation, because each organization has, different nuances, different challenges. Each person has their own skill sets. Um, and so I think trying to understand like self-reflection first is really important. And so that would probably be my advice to my mentee is like, hey, actually, um, do a SWOT analysis for yourself first and try to understand your strengths, weaknesses, what are your opportunities, and what are the potential threats. It sounds a little bit, scary, but I usually like to convert the word threats to like, what are some opportunities for like growth or some challenges you may face in your new role. Whether that's something where it's like you aren't an expert in X, Y, and Z. So that could be a challenge or a threat for you. So doing that first is probably my first recommendation. And then from there, you can kind of build and grow and try to find ways to fill in your own personal gaps.
Awesome. Yeah, I would plus one that for everyone listening at Demand Base, we're big on the Enneagram process. So we've gone through that as leadership teams and across our teams. And even ahead of our marketing offsite, which is next week, we went and did a strengths assessment. And that's one of the exercises we're going to do. It gives you your top 5 strengths, but even across uh, my team, I have a very small team. So there are 2 folks on my team right now, and even looking side by side with the first one to complete it, we didn't have a single strength in common of our top 5, which is really interesting when you think about how we work together and the things that I'm running and the things that she's running. So that's an incredible process. I think that's great advice. So I will plus 100 that one. What about the trends or innovations in account based strategies? How do you see any of the trends that you're noticing shaping the future of demand gen?
Yeah, I think I've been following along. I think it's been like almost 2 years when we were really like AI technology is coming and what does that mean and how do we apply that to our day to day? And so I think it allows us to really enhance our capabilities and efficiency. And that's something that like we really focus on for my team is like, how do we become more efficient and how do we actually help AI help us be more efficient? And so for some examples, like you may end up having like AI do like dynamic landing pages, personalized ads, and you know content recommendations that are much more relevant to the buyer. All in turn, like ultimately helping with like conversions as well. So, and like, yeah, at Primo, for example, we actually have like an AI tagging component to make content operations way smoother and easier to find content. And all of that is just like the change and the shift. I think there's a lot of amazing technology that's coming out. And in turn, that can be a lot of noise. And so I don't know if you've experienced this, but I, for a while, was going through this rabbit hole of like anytime someone mentioned a new AI software to help with demand gen, I was like looking at it and looking into it and getting feedback on it. And so I think the one thing though was my North Star is like trying to realign though, like, does this support my OKR though? And how does it fit with our current existing tech stack? And is this a pain point? And how do I justify the ROI for that tech stack? So I think that's something that I've noticed over time is just like we are getting more feedback too around the earlier adopters of AI technology, and we're hearing things that are working. And so it's great to see like the technology being adopted and people benefiting from it.
Yeah, I love that. And in marketing, we have never chased a shiny object, right? I feel that too. I know when I first found out about Midjourney a couple of years ago, I went so deep, and that was in a Discord server, and you figure out the prompts, and then I was building, all these amazing Space Jam characters and just doing random things because it was interesting. I think it's always good to learn, but your point is a very important one. We have to do strategy goals first and then find the technology and the tool set to get us there, which is, uh, you know, we're pretty close to making it a perfect segue. I have one more question before we jump into tech, but we're
Yeah.
shifting into our quick hitters. So this is kind of our lightning round as we're coming up on time. A lot of these can be very quick, brief answers. And the first, you can only pick one thing. What is the single biggest challenge in B2B sales today?
Oh, I know you said quick, quick answer. There's so many, but I'm just gonna say because or to my earlier answer, and what I prioritize is targeting the wrong prospects. Biggest
Love it.
challenge. Yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, tech. So this would have been the perfect segue if I didn't want to ask that, but we had to get to it first. Technology. What are your favorite tools and technologies that you're using today?
Favorite tools today. You know, I love Asana. I love project management technology. So, Workboard, Asana. Um, Zoom Info Copilot has been really interesting as well. And I think the other technology, actually, I'll just stop there.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. All right. What about good reads? Book, blog, newsletter, podcast. You can take it anywhere you want.
Yeah. So that quote I was mentioning earlier about the book from my recommendation from my mentor, it's called Reset by Dan Heath. And so that's been really great. Recommended if you're interested in learning about like how to improve your overall day-to-day operations as a leader.
Love it. Who inspires you the most in B2B? So this could be about people.
Inspires me. I would say the specific people that I've worked with that as like a BDR, and now I'm seeing them lead their organizations as leaders. So just a name drop, if you don't follow them, you should. Shannon Hawari is definitely one of those leaders. And then Graham Collins has always been a great leader and mentor with amazing insights around comp plans.
Outstanding. Comp plans. No one cares about that. Yeah, the most important thing that drives behavior, right? How you get paid. So great shout outs there. And then Lily, the most important question of all, how can everyone get in touch with you after this episode?
Yeah, great question. So happy to connect on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn name is Lily Youn Jaroszewski. And so I won't ask anybody to spell that out. But if you just type in Lily Youn, you should be able to find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. You crushed it.
Oh, thank you.